Welcome to the new episode of All Digest. I'm your host, Matyash, and I have with me Suzanne, Connolly. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, Matt.
Thank you for being on. And I've known about your book for years and years and years because somewhere, I don't know where I found it, but some forum that Dr. Hawkins left, was it a forward or a blurb at the end of the book or something like
Yeah, it
that?
was kind of a recommendation on the back cover of the book. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, because I value that highly. So I got in the book now. I hadn't read it yet, but I got the book now. So I have that because you have it on Kindle now, the digital version, yeah?
Yes, yes. You can get it
Yes.
on Kindle or print as you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Mhm.
So you're still, so let's go back to the beginning. You're now living in Arizona, right? In Sedona.
Yeah.
You're still living
Hmm.
there.
Yes.
So what's your background? Were you studying a psychologist or something like that?
Well, I'm a clinical social worker, basically. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology,
Yeah.
and I was really interested in sociology, I found, when I
Yeah.
was taking that course. And then I just thought I looked at a lot of the therapists that I really admired, and I kind of liked some of the social workers like Virginia Satir and other famous MSWs. So I switched to social work and I got my master's degree in social work. And then I did a lot of work behind the one-way mirror for a couple of years and got my MFT. So I'm also a marriage and family therapist, and also I'm a substance abuse therapist.
Oh,
So
wow. Do you
yeah,
still do that work in marriage and counseling? Like,
I do. Yeah,
wow. Well, what's
I've cut back some, as I've gotten older, but yeah. Hmm.
the were you married at some point? Did it they help you?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if it helped my marriage, but I think so. I was married for 60 years.
Okay.
Actually, my husband died in 2020, right before our 60th wedding anniversary, a
Oh
few
my
months
gosh.
before. But we already had a party planned and everything. So,
My condolences.
yeah, well, thank you.
Um,
We had a good life together.
okay.
Lots of
Um,
ups and downs, as with any marriage.
so yeah, I didn't expect to ask this, but then the counseling, did the counseling then help, or is it the service because you can't be as objective because you're right in it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to tell you the honest truth, if I ever started saying anything that sounded therapeutic, my husband would say, "Don't go therapist on me."
Yeah, I think I
Okay.
would have been the same.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no.
That didn't help. It
Okay,
probably
but
helped me learning to be more accepting and, in other ways, it helped me be a better
yeah,
partner. Probably. Yeah.
yeah, because you can't be doing that kind of work while you're in a marriage. Like you can do on other people because that's more appropriate, but then because
Yeah.
then the roles change. You can't be the wife and the parent and the therapist at the same time,
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
do you know that word transactional analysis or something when he's like comparing the relationships, and it's like sometimes it's like it might be two adults, but sometimes the relationship is like between adult and a parent or adult and a child.
Yeah. Yeah. Try to
Yeah,
stay away from that, but that
yeah.
happens.
Yeah,
Sometimes it works for some people too. Mhm.
right, right.
And some people just kind of need somebody to help serve as a container for them.
Yeah. Do you
Mhm.
think it's beneficial when a couple first before they even get married, if they because they might have some differences that they don't know about. So what if they go and um go to counseling just as a preemptive measure to see
Uh-huh.
what they will dig up, you know?
Well, a few people have done that with me. I'm
Yeah.
sure that who specialize in that. And I don't know what the statistics are really, if people do better with that or not. What I always tell couples when they come to see me, and they usually start by saying, "Oh, it's about our communication. We can't communicate." And I usually sit there and say, "No, it's not."
It's not.
And then I say, and they really look at me like I've lost my mind. I say,
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with your marriage or your relationship, whatever it is. I use it kind of interchangeably. And I say, your marriage is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's bringing up the things you need to work on.
Oh man.
You don't grow on a mountaintop gazing at your navel. You grow in relationship to other people. And the most intense opportunity to grow is a committed two-person relationship. And
Mm.
it's bring up things you need to work on. So it gets them a little more focused on what they need to work on to be a good partner in a relationship.
So you recommend getting a girlfriend or a boyfriend just to advance spiritually, to bring up stuff. Would you say?
Well, I don't think I need to recommend it. I think people are pretty much programmed to want to do that.
Yeah, that's correct. But sometimes you'd be surprised. Sometimes people on spiritual path, they're like, oh, I just need to be alone. I don't know if I'm ready, this and that. So they're very uh, I don't know if I know some people, but some people are like, oh, I don't think I think it might be not hurt me or some way, or I don't think I'm for it right now or something like that.
They may be somebody with an attachment difficulty, like they're afraid of being rejected, like
Yeah.
they aren't securely attached from childhood or, something like that. And there may be people just called to do that too. We're all different. Not
Yeah.
everybody called to be in a relationship, but truthfully for me, spirituality is about if there was a measure, and I don't think we can measure other people's spirituality, but how you treat other people, especially people who don't have status, who don't have a lot of money, who don't have a lot of power. How
Hmm.
you really see all people as dignified human beings.
Yeah.
And to me, that's the true test of spirituality.
You ever have a couple come in and you're like, oh man, they have a lot of work to do on spirituality, though, or you can tell somebody's just a dishonest person, and you're like, you shouldn't be marrying this guy or this girl. It'll be a bad. You ever get that sense like this is bad?
Well, I mean, I don't judge them specifically on spirituality. I mean, I think everyone is where they are.
Yeah. Okay.
But, I can spot narcissism often, which is kind of a difficult problem for anybody to live with. And sometimes you can't live with that. That's
Hmm.
people who can't look at themselves. They're never wrong. They have to demean other people so they feel good about themselves.
Okay, that's really interesting. So how would one notice if one is dating a narcissist? Like, what
Well,
was some of the common signs?
dating can be difficult because I've had many people say the minute we got married, everything changed.
Oh.
But I would say, somebody who's overly focused on themselves, whether it be inwardly or outwardly, somebody who puts other people down, somebody who's critical of other people, those are signs. Their way of feeling good about themselves is to make someone else feel bad about themselves. So they're sort of
Hmm.
vampires that way. They have to put somebody down so that they feel okay.
This can be very subtle though. They can be like slight passive aggressive jokes and stuff like that. And sometimes you don't know if that
Yes.
part of their personality, or is that narcissism, or is that both
I
sometimes.
mean, everybody's probably got a little slice of narcissism, but to be a true narcissistic personality disorder, and you can't really box people in, there's all kinds of gradients of everything, but, there's somebody who can't make that essential human connection.
Hmm.
They have no empathy. They really can't do it. I mean, there's something probably in their brain, like some limitation, that they can't really put themselves into somebody else's place and know how they feel.
Hmm. So if you're a person that does something bad and feels wrong to another person, then you're probably not a narcissist of the type you're talking
Exactly. If
about.
you feel guilt is a good thing. Now, guilt is a good thing. We'd all be narcissists, and we wouldn't be very human if we were all narcissistic people. But guilt hung on to too long is not a good thing. But
Mhm.
we need to be very self-forgiving, but we also need to have the ability to look at ourselves.
Yeah, honestly.
Yes,
And there I think in general I haven't tried much formal therapy or any at all, actually, not yet, but I would say
that's okay.
most people can. I've tried a lot of with you as well, TFT and all that stuff. I've tried a lot of alternative stuff, but not any formal psychoanalysis or anything
Yeah,
like that. But I think most people would benefit from something like that. Some
something.
kind of therapy.
Yeah, I suppose everyone has room to grow, if they want
C-
to
Yeah,
talk
because
to
then
somebody.
you're projecting your own issues onto other people sometimes, you know?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if people have developed a healthy conscience, the way they do that is through guilt,
Mm.
and that's a good thing. To be hard on yourself is another thing, but to know you've done something wrong is a good thing.
Yeah.
To be bad if you've hurt somebody is a good thing.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
then to do something about it,
Yes,
and
yes,
and
exactly.
and and it's also a program, there's making amends, and and then there's
Yes, yeah. And if you can't, let go and forgive yourself and know you're human because we all make mistakes and we all hurt people from time to time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then going forward, you're doing marriage counseling, and then at what point does TFT come in?
Well, there's a woman called Susan Johnson who does something called EFT, which is emotionally focused therapy. It's a whole different, it's not emotional freedom technique.
Right.
And it was developed long before the other EFT.
Yeah.
But she has good research showing that if you don't address the emotional underpinnings of a problem, and they're just doing it by rote, but they're not working on the underlying issues, it doesn't last. And I don't really, I've taken a little bit of her training, but I don't think I really would go about it the way she does. What she does is very eloquent. It takes a long time and a lot of money, to go through that. And I find that tapping, it really helps in couple therapy. Like, for instance, if a man is afraid of getting too close, and one sign of that might be as soon as he starts getting close, he backs away.
Yeah,
It's a
I think that happens to me sometimes. I just admit
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because you may have had a mother who was overbearing, or you might have had an ex-wife who tried to control you, or whatever the issue is, or you might have seen your father cower in front of your mother or something, and you don't want to be that man. So you
Right.
have reason to not let a woman control you. It's kind of the Samson and Delilah complex, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah. So they can tap on their fear of being close.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that's interesting. So then you start combining and counseling therapy, you start combining TFT and getting
Yes,
quickly to
right,
the resolution, because
right,
do you
right.
find that it's faster than talk therapy, just tapping it out on
Oh,
energetically?
yes. But I do think there's a place for talk therapy because you need to talk in order to really discern what the real problem is. People
Mm.
don't often know, they'll come in and they'll say, "Oh, I'm really depressed," but they're really anxious.
They're
Yeah.
just feeling down in some way, and they're like out of it.
What
Like
was that?
they're just feeling out in some way. They're just feeling out of it, and they
Yeah,
think it's
yeah,
depression.
yeah. Or sometimes there's an anxiety driven depression where they're so anxious for so long that their system just kind of breaks down and they're so tired and out of gas, so to speak, and then they feel depressed. But
Mm.
anxiety is a huge problem with most people.
Oh yeah.
I could say it's a problem with most people, and it's a huge problem with some people.
Do you think overall in your what you've seen in your practice, counseling and then TFT, do you think people have more anxiety now, or did back then when it started?
I, I sincerely doubt if there's much difference. I think anxiety has been with us since the beginning of time.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sorry. So, let me see if I can turn that on. Let me get rid of it. That's the phone that wasn't working, but
Now it's working again.
the magic phone.
Um,
Okay.
s- so at
So
what,
yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a built-in mechanism because, fight or flight, you need to, probably people were pretty anxious when they were roaming the earth and, tribes fought tribes and
yeah.
countries fought countries and, we were running away from the saber-toothed tiger and the whatever else was out there in those days.
Mm,
So, it's kind of a mechanism in our brain that's kind of almost outlived its usefulness in a lot of times, because
yeah.
we get just about small things.
Did you find in your practice after you started incorporating TFT that it went much smoother and
Oh,
there was much
yeah.
better results?
Yes, really. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think I got results after a long period of time before, but with TFT, it goes so much faster and smoother and deeper, I think,
Yeah.
because you're getting to the root causes of things. Yeah.
And what was your opinion of after being trained in TFT? Obviously, I think TFT was first. Yes, TFT was way first before
Oh,
EFT.
Dr. Callahan was the first person in the world who figured out that tapping on particular acupuncture points could reduce psychological problems. I mean, nobody came up with that before him, and there's stories of how he came up with that. And he worked, long hours figuring out which spots would work with what kinds of problems. And, he really put a lot of energy into this. And then later, some of the people that took his training kind of took it and added certain things or took off certain things or something and felt like it was an improvement. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So they basically took his stuff and kind of tried to simplify it in a way, and that's EFT. Is that what it is?
Well, I don't know if they simplified it because they tapped more spots and added affirmations. But of course, in the very beginning, he did have the I deeply and completely accept myself, even though I have this problem. And when I took the training, we did have that affirmation. And later, we all decided to see if it would work just as well without it. And it did. But
Oh,
in
I
the
see. So
beginning, Dr. Callahan used that without the tapping. So he kept it and did the tapping. And then he realized, wait, I think it's just the tap, really the active ingredient here. So we don't use affirmations at all. And affirmations can be very dangerous anyway. So,
okay, let's talk about this. Why are they dangerous?
well, there's been meta-analysis of all the research done with affirmations, but affirmations in the short run make people who already feel good about themselves even better. But people who don't feel good about themselves, it makes them feel worse. It's cognitive dissonance. They keep saying these things, and it doesn't make a difference. And then they think there's something wrong with them even more.
Hmm.
And I've had people suicidal after watching, for instance, I probably won't name anything in particular, but movies on using affirmations and
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
things like that. And they actually were suicidal because they were doing all these things and they weren't living in mansions and driving Rolls Royces.
Oh, is that a certain movie that came out 2006? Is that what you're talking about?
I
Or
don't know when it came
okay.
out. Anyway. Not to badmouth anything because everything does some good. So yeah, but
Yes.
but but I think affirmations can be very dangerous.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
talking to yourself positively is a different thing. Like
Uh,
if you catch yourself talking to yourself negatively, you can say something more positive to yourself, but that's a
what
little different than an affirmation.
This is interesting. Well, would it be possible? Because I have a hypothesis about affirmations that if you say an affirmation, everything that stands in its way, it's is still there. So that's why I think it's very correct what you're saying that the person will feel worse because they're saying this affirmation and all that's standing in the way, it's presenting itself more and more and more. But
Yeah.
what if you're what if you would like, as let's say somebody wants, somebody has this affirmation that they want to really work in their life. Could they come to TFT and be like, I want to clear everything that's in the path of this affirmation? Would that be something that's
Yeah, well,
possible?
you talk to a person always. One of my things I ask people, what do you want to get out of these sessions with me? What's your goal? Because sometimes people have to think about that. They really don't even know what they came in with. And then it's like, well, what's getting in the way? How do you get in the way of that? That kind of, and then those are the things you can tap on, the things that get in the way.
Hmm.
Mm.
And there's a lot of things getting in the way usually.
Yeah, not everything you can tap on either, but
Oh yeah, okay. Like for
mhm.
instance, what?
Well, like somebody wants to manifest more money in their life, and they think that sitting around is going to trying to manifest is going to bring more money into their life.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, you have to think about what's getting in the way of their getting a job, or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not about tapping for, the lottery winner. So let's
Yes,
manifest the
right.
number.
Yeah, right.
I don't
Has
know
to
if
be
that's
a
an honest
reasonable thing
way.
to tap on. Yeah. You
Yeah,
can
just
tap on anything that might get in their way of their being more prosperous.
yeah. Let's tap on my bad luck. I want to get rid of my bad luck. Is that something?
Yeah, yeah, right.
But
Yeah.
oftentimes in life you make your luck, I guess. It's like I really believe I don't 100% like it sometimes, but Ben Franklin had a quote that God helps those that help themselves.
Mhm.
You know,
Well, at least it was Ben Franklin and not the Bible. I've heard people quote that like the Bible. The Bible never says that.
yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I were you
And
raised
I think there's some truth in it. There's some truth
yes.
in it. Some people just really have bad luck. They're born to really difficult parents, and you know,
Yeah, my might just be their karma, as they would say in the East, is whatever the card that they're dealt with.
yes, yes, whether it's karma or not, we have no proof of what that is. We have faith that there's something in the universe that's just, and there's
Yes.
some reason for all this suffering and so forth. But yeah. Mhm.
What is was that do you have any kind of religious or spiritual background?
Well, I'm Catholic, but in a kind of a very Franciscan way.
Okay.
Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah.
So you like the current Pope?
Richard Rohr is one of my people I like to read for spiritual, if you know of him.
I have not heard of him. Richard Rohr.
Yeah.
Is he a Franciscan Catholic?
Yeah, he's a Franciscan priest. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
very
I go
interesting.
to a church when I can that's down in the valley, and I do mission work with them sometimes. I go down to Mexico, and they're all about like meeting Jesus in the poor.
Okay, gotcha. I
Mhm.
have to say that the best Catholic I've ever known was I was in a Catholic hostel in Paris, and in France, for some reason, it takes 2 years to convert and become a Catholic. Not 1 year,
Oh,
as usually it takes 2 years. And this guy was a lawyer, and lawyers work long hours. He'd work 12 hours shifts, and more, 13 hours. And sometimes after work, he'd go to the section of Paris where there's prostitutes, and he tried to talk them out of their profession, or he'd
hmm.
take a lot of bread and go and give it to the poor and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
it's really amazing.
Hmm.
Sometimes converts are better Catholic, oftentimes, than Catholics themselves
Yes, yes, yeah.
that were
And
born in
Richard
it.
Rohr is not, I mean, Zen Buddhists love him. Everybody likes him.
Okay, is
Yeah.
he's in the U.S.? Yes.
Yeah, he's in New Mexico.
Okay,
Hmm.
all right.
Yeah. Mhm.
So at what point did you move to Sedona?
In 76.
76. Wow,
Yeah.
must have been pretty small town back then.
It was about 4,000. I think there was one stop sign, but certainly no stop lights.
Was there any hotels at that point already?
A couple of small ones, yes,
Yeah.
not big. Yeah.
Do you know anything about this is an odd question, anything about the vortexes or anything? Because people say that there's something in Sedona I know it attracts a lot of weird people, you might say, and but there's some kind of some people say there's some kind of energy thing going around in Sedona.
Well, there's a lot of iron in the rock that might account for some of it. I don't
Okay.
know. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I myself have done a little self experiment. And if I think of myself as being somewhere and it's a vortex, I can make it feel like a vortex.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, this really shows the power of the mind, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
W-
But, they may be true, they may not be true.
Okay. But
Yeah.
sounds like you're not in that world. You're more in your kind of clinical practice of counsel like family marriage counseling and TFT
Yeah, trauma is my specialty,
trauma.
actually. I
Okay.
do more work with trauma. That's where I've gone so many different places in the world after traumatic events and taught lay people how to do TFT, or not always, like in Japan after Fukushima. I taught doctors back basically in Japan to do thought field therapy. But
Oh
in Rwanda,
wow.
we taught community leaders to do TFT, because in the middle and low income countries, there's a severe shortage in mental health workers.
Yes.
And
So
some experiments have tried, like, well, you take doctors and nurses that are already there and community health workers, and you train them to do psychological things too. And those experiments work out pretty well, except they're not sustainable because these people are overburdened anyway. There's not enough doctors and nurses and community health workers either.
yeah.
So they can only do so much, and it's trying to stretch them too thin. Those are called step up programs. So finding that those don't work, what my research has been on showing that community leaders can get great results if they're community leaders looked up to in the community.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I get invited, and the person there on the ground rounds up people that are respected in the community, and then we train those people.
Okay. And how long does that training take?
2 days.
2 days.
2 days. And then we have research showing that all 3 times that we did research in Rwanda, with one session delivered by a community leader, the results last for 2 years. 2 years later,
Wow.
and these are people who were buried alive, saw their whole family killed in front of them, raped, all kinds of horrible things.
Has there been
And
any studies comparing TFT to counseling or anything like that, like just regular counseling or a CBT or something like that? That would be very interesting.
well, right now I'm doing a research project in Mexico with an indigenous community. And there's an indigenous university there. It's a very kind of informal thing, but it
Yeah.
is a university. And so I was there for a few weeks in November getting it set up. But right now it's just starting. But in one group, this is going to be teacher led in the classroom, 10 minutes of TFT a day. In another group, there's 10 minutes of art therapy a day.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm. So, and it's double blind. So they both think they're a treatment group, and we're just trying to figure out what works with school children to help them get better reading grades in math and reading and math, and to reduce trauma symptoms.
Hmm. Well,
So
what is for some listeners that don't know, what is a double blind study?
that means the children that are being treated don't know if they're in the treatment group or the other or the wait list group, you might say, because they are getting some treatment too. So it looks,
Okay.
not
So
like they're just waiting. It's not that they're just waiting. A
yeah,
wait
because
list,
placebo can be really, yeah.
and then and they're doing some things, and they're getting attention. They're getting the same amount of attention. So the parents don't know either. And the assessors, these are graduate students who are going to the Indigenous University. These are all Indigenous students. And they're doing the assessing, but they do it with a little tablet. We bought them tablets. So the children, all they do is set the children up, and they don't know what the answers are. The assessors know nothing about the answers the children are giving.
Okay.
So they disappear. The kid answers it, and then it disappears into the cloud. And the answer, the next question, it disappears into the cloud. Now, if they're really being abused or something, they can talk about it, but it's not encouraged. But if that happens, they're not supposed to ignore that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But and the parents don't know which group, the teachers don't know which group.
Okay.
Yeah, nobody knows. They'll have a number, and only one person has the names and the numbers, but they don't have the results.
Right. Okay. So
So,
so to
yeah,
eliminate any kind of possible placebo effect.
yeah, right. Uh-huh.
Mm.
Yeah.
And and so the
And
results are not out yet.
oh, it's just starting, and it's
It's
going to
just
last
starting.
through July. Mhm.
Why do you
But
think it's such a science seems to have such a reluctance to tackle any studies, many studies that are related to? There's so many alternative therapies, and most of the studies that they done are on CBT and stuff like that. Not even on psychoanalysis, and even less on TFT, EFT, or anything like that.
well,
Um,
part of it is, there's not money in
oh, I
it.
see. Somebody needs
If
to
you're selling a
sponsor.
pill, if you're a drug company, as well they should, they're going to do the research. They have to do the research, and they have to register the research now.
Right,
So they can't hide any of their studies. They have to say exactly what they're going to do, and it's all available to the public or anybody.
right,
So you can't hide things anymore. Because it used to be that they could just, a lot of people see it as government control, but really the government is trying to create transparency, because this way pharmaceutical companies can't hide the things that don't work. They
right,
can't do these studies and just publish the one that did work. So
right. So
yeah,
they
so
have to publish.
our study is registered. The one in Mexico is registered with the UK, actually,
Mm-hmm.
with organization that registers studies. Uh-huh.
Organization in UK. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I live currently in
Yeah,
UK.
right. Yeah.
Um, so for those who have never experienced TFT, could we do maybe a small demonstration of, or maybe of what you teach in that? Well, it takes 2 days, you said. So what's
Yeah.
what would be a basic technique of TFT, let's say?
Say a basic technique might be, if anyone's watching this, they can always tap along with this just to see if the basic one works for them. It's really a little more complicated. You might be reversed, for instance, first. And so just to make sure that you're not reversed, or it actually doesn't ensure that you're not reversed, but to reduce the probability that you're reversed, you can tap on the side of your hand.
Mm-hmm.
And usually tapping on the small intestine meridian there, making sure you're up high enough that you're almost to your little finger to get the right spot. You're have a good likelihood, if you are reversed, to unreverse yourself. And
Um,
reversals are blockages in the energy system, and if the energy isn't flowing, the tapping isn't going to be helpful. So, okay, so hypothetically, we've reduced any chance of us being reversed. And then this would be a simple algorithm for trauma and anxiety. So you would tap the beginning of your eyebrow. Usually 5 to 10 taps. I usually do at least 10. And I do it organically, and I don't have people say anything. I think that detracts myself. And besides, a lot of the veterans and people I work with would never say anything.
right.
And tapping under the eye, right on the edge of the bony socket, right
Mm-hmm.
under the eye as if you're looking forward in the mirror, right under your iris of your eye. And of course, the big thing, I didn't mention this and I should have stressed this, you have to be thinking about the problem. You
Oh,
have to
yes,
be staying
yes.
with the upset. So I didn't do a good job of doing that. Let's start over. Let's
We have
problem.
we have time.
Let's think about the problem. Something that you want to be different in your life, and think about what a zero would mean. A zero would mean maybe peace and acceptance about something, or not being anxious about something.
Yes.
I'm so sorry that I didn't just jump to the tapping. And then when you have that, sort of, if you can, give it a 0 to 10, 10 being the worst anxiety or feeling you have, and 0 being peace and acceptance, no anxiety or no depression or whatever it is you're working on. Although in this case, we're just doing anxiety. Well, I'll just take you through the whole thing and you'll be introduced to some spots. So, okay, so we're gonna, now that you're tuned into that thought field, and a field is an invisible area of influence, this field has an influence on you and how you feel. You're going to tap the side of your hand in case tuning into that thought field reverses you. And often it does, about 40% of the time. Then you're going to tap on the beginning of your eyebrow. This is the usual trauma spot. So usually there's some trauma connected to whatever you're feeling. And then under your eye is the stomach meridian. It's usually has to do with some anxiety. And under your arm.
This is a few inches under the.
Yeah, let's see. It would be right. If you were a male, it would be lateral to the nipples.
Okay.
And then under your collarbone. And that's a spot that's right between the second and third rib. And it's right next to the sternum, but not on the sternum.
Okay. So it's a bit lower than this, what I'm doing now here.
Yeah, it's just right. If you pushed in, you'd hit the sternum. If you pushed up, you hit a rib. Push down, we hit a rib. A little hole. Yeah.
All right. Here.
And that is the basic algorithm, but I'll just take you a little bit further. If there's anger connected with this, tap your little finger by the bottom corner of the nail, and that's on the corner that's facing the thumb. And if there's actually even some rage connected with it, tap the outer edge of your eye. Usually we don't do all of these spots, but because this is a wider audience and I don't know what you're thinking about and what are connected with it, we can do this. And then under the collarbone.
Wait, we go down here or?
The collarbone.
Yeah. Oh yeah, here.
Okay. And then if you have any issues of self-esteem connected with this, you know, a little self-doubt or shame or embarrassment, lack of confidence, tap under your nose. And under your lower lip. Maybe even your index finger, if there's any feelings of guilt. Again, the side facing the thumb by the bottom corner of the nail. And under the collarbone. And any feelings of sadness and depression, you tap on the back of your hand. And that's between the 4th and the 5th metacarpal. So right in here, in that little valley between those two bones.
Am I doing the right spot?
Yes. Perfect. And under the collarbone. And of course you would tailor this to what the person had told you.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're using kinesiology, you tailor it even more. And then if the SUD has dropped at all, and we're going to assume it has, just for the purpose of this demonstration, there's other things you would do if it hasn't. We're going to tap on the back of the hand again, and we're going to do something called the 9-gamma treatment. And Dr. Callahan spent months and months testing hundreds and hundreds of different eye positions. Each one activates a different area of the brain, and they came up with 9 of them. So we usually don't need all of those, but it's faster just to do the gamut rather than test for each one. So you're going to close your eyes, staying in that thought field of what you're working on, that pain or sadness or anxiety, whatever you're working on, anger. And open your eyes, staying with those same feelings and keeping your head level. Point your eyes down either to the left or the right. And then move your eyes back to normal and point your eyes down the other way. And bring your eyes down to normal. Don't move your head when you do this. And then eyes around in a circle so you can go clockwise first or counterclockwise. And then the other way.
I'm still tapping while I'm doing this, yeah?
Yes, correct. Thank you. And then we want to isolate the right hemisphere of the brain, and music is largely in the right brain. So we're going to hear music in our brain. We can hum if you want, but I just usually have people hear music, not words, just music, not a song. It could be Beethoven or something that's just music. And then let your mind wander over to the left brain with counting, and that isolates the left hemisphere of the brain. And then go back to the right hemisphere of the brain with more music.
Mm-hmm. And you can count also in your mind as
Yeah,
well. You could do audible as well if you want, right?
you could do what?
Audible, like you can
Yes,
say
you can
it, yeah.
count out loud or make music out loud.
Okay.
And tap the beginning of your eyebrow again. We're going to repeat first of all, we're going to repeat the basic treatment, which is eyebrow, eye, arm, collarbone. So it's going to be eyebrow and under the eye, same with any anxiety, under the arm, under the collarbone. And then if you feel like there's some anger attached, you can tap your little finger at the bottom corner of the nail. And the outside edge of the eye, which is actually for rage, which is a more intense form of anger.
Hmm.
More
Does it matter
active.
which side you're tapping? It doesn't matter. Either side
No,
is fine.
in the beginning, Dr. Callahan tapped on both sides, and then he found it wasn't any more powerful than doing one side, but you can do either. Some people just like to do both sides.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then under the collarbone. And he thought of under the collarbone as just sort of a punctuation mark, like it emphasized things and speeded things up a little bit. It's a very powerful point on the human body in acupuncture. And then in any problems of self-esteem, embarrassment, shame, under the nose. I find a lot of people need to tap this one a lot. And then under the lower lip. And if there's any guilt involved, the index finger by the bottom corner of the nail.
So this is like if in any day something happens and I feel guilty, short of fixing it, you can just tap here. Just
Yeah,
tap this
well, it's
spot.
really for people stuck in guilt. Like,
Yes.
usually the people that get stuck in guilt are people that shouldn't feel guilty to begin with.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then under the collarbone. Yeah, I mean, they feel guilty about somebody sexually abusing them a long time ago or something, I mean,
Yeah.
it happens a lot. Under the collarbone. And then staying with any feelings of sadness or depression, tap the back of your hand for a while. We usually tap the spot for quite a long time.
Back like here.
Oh, the back of your hand.
So okay, sorry.
Yeah, the gamut spot.
Gamut.
And just tap that, really focusing on any depression or sadness that you have connected to the problem, if you do. And that's kind of a one size fits all under the collarbone as a demonstration, but it's actually much more effective if you talk to the person and kind of design the algorithm, especially for them. And then, of course, later on, I'll often do a lot of muscle testing to see where to tap in what order, especially for people who have a lot of childhood trauma and attachment problems and what we call complex post-traumatic stress disorder.
Wow. So this is not a lot of people know about that like for example TFT you could tackle PTSD. Is that correct?
Oh, always. Everybody in Rwanda had PTSD. I mean, these are people who went through major trauma.
because this is it's almost scandalous how like mainstream science always they'll put a counselor, put a this and that, but that's very slow compared to TFT. In TFT in 2 sessions or 3 sessions you might accomplish what they do in months.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
a big expense also on the taxpayers if they do on the
Oh,
taxpayers'
yeah.
money.
Mhm. Now, a lot of people that come in with PTSD also have complex PTSD, which is a much longer, this is very early childhood, severe abuse. And many people that go into the military, for instance, I have a contract with the Veterans Administration, and many people who go into the military are people who are kind of lost and don't have, skills, and they go into the military. And so they already have a setup for getting PTSD in the military.
Why is that?
Well, about 28% of people in combat, men or women, get PTSD from the same kind of combat experiences. And we wonder, well, why do some people get it and some don't? And one of the reasons, there's many factors, age can have something to do with it. But the other thing is exposure to trauma before. So it sort
Oh,
of opens up old wounds of being powerless and helpless. If you think of it in a war situation, you can't run, you can't escape, you can fight, and when you're a child, you can't run away either or escape. Yeah.
mm.
So it sort of opens up old wounds.
So people that have already experienced trauma are more predisposed to more further
Yeah.
trauma.
Yes. Right. Uh-huh.
Oh,
And to
that
be
makes sense.
traumatized by events that somebody else wouldn't be traumatized by.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that makes sense because people that are already damaged in situations that ordinary people wouldn't be, they
Mhm.
might be more and I think in a broad scale you can see now in modern culture there's terms like microaggression and stuff like that. And that might be people just that traumatized perhaps early in life with something, and then they hear an opinion that they don't like and they're traumatized by that already.
Yeah. Right. Because it's reminding them of something in the past.
Yes.
Maybe somebody criticizes them, but their dad criticizes them constantly and put them down.
Mm,
So any hint of criticism just opens up that old wound. Yeah.
mm. And when did you let's go to the TFT. You wrote a book, the book that you mentioned earlier in the podcast.
Uh-huh.
And the book is about TFT and what it can do.
Yeah, it's just sort of I originally wrote it for other therapists so that they could see how you could integrate TFT with more traditional
Mm-hmm.
therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy and talk therapy and behavioral therapy and other kinds of therapy. So hypnotherapy. I don't know if I think I have something in there, at least with NLP. So,
Okay.
uh-huh.
So would you
Yeah.
recommend NLP? I never tried it.
I'm a master therapist, so to speak.
Oh,
I
you
took,
are?
yeah, but I don't find the tools as useful as but there are some things I do, like they have a 6-step reframe, I think they call it, and I do that a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
so there are some things that I do, and
okay.
good training. It was good training. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very popular. It seems to be the and again, it seems to be more popular than TFT.
I don't know. Maybe I don't know. May depend on the locality or something, but
Okay. Okay.
based on Milton Erickson's work, it was really based on Milton Erickson's work. And I've spoken at the Ericksonian conference a few times how to integrate TFT and Ericksonian work. And
And
yeah,
Erickson was a hypnotherapist.
being a therapist. Uh-huh.
Okay. I think it's a very famous one, right?
He's probably the most famous hypnotherapist.
Hmm. Very
Mhm.
interesting. So let's go back a little bit. You moved to Sedona, and then at some point there, when you're in Sedona, because there's not many people at that point, 4,000, 5,000 people, and then you meet David Hawkins at some point.
Yes, the reason we met Dr. Hawkins was probably because we moved to Sedona. We bought a grocery store that was going out of business. Well, it
Yeah.
wasn't going out of business, but it was losing money. It was part of a small chain.
Yeah.
And he was losing money on this store, so he wanted to get rid of it so we could afford it. I mean, we had 6 kids. We came to Sedona in a truck with 6 kids, a goat, and 2 dogs. So,
Wow. I didn't
so,
know
so,
that part of the
mhm.
story that you had 6 kids. I didn't know that
Yeah,
part of the
yeah.
story.
So we start this, and of course, we're all working at the store because it's a store losing money. But we start integrating health food into it and educating people on how to eat healthier. And it becomes semi-successful. Enough to our kids work there, and all turned out well because they learned how to work and things like that. And but David was a customer. And for the first year David came to Sedona, it was likely part of his own spiritual work, but he didn't talk to anybody. So he would shop, and my husband would say, "Hi, Dave, how you going?"
He
And
was
my husband's always saying, "Hi, how's it going? Nice day."
was he could you tell was he in a sort of a state, but you didn't interact with him much, I guess, but
I didn't interact with him so much, yeah, as
yeah.
at that time. Later I did, but yeah.
Okay.
Um, and anyway, later on, we were somewhere and he introduced my husband as his best friend.
He introduced your husband as
My
his best.
husband as his best friend, and I think he respected him because he didn't let the fact that he wasn't talking influence him. Anyway, that's my guess. I never talked to him about that, but yeah.
I have a theory that maybe at that time, because he was going to some spiritual change, it was perhaps
Yeah,
hard to integrate that, and he
yeah,
was
yeah,
relearning the ways of the world, as it were.
yeah. I think so. Yeah, he was a very famous psychiatrist, in New York.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah.
because I'd like to see all the any records on that, or any, because like it was such a long time ago. I think he left in the late 70s, so he was a director of uh I don't know what it was called, but it was a big practice in New York, in
The
Long
biggest
Island.
practice ever in New York City. And I'll tell you one way that came in handy. He wasn't working as a professional, as a therapist when he came, and not for many years. He had chickens, and he'd sell the eggs at the store. He was talking by then, and we'd buy the eggs. And but one day I got a contract for a girls' school. It was a kind of razor wired place. It was a school, but it was a place where kids that got into trouble and had problems would go. The state would put them there.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get their hospital accreditation. They didn't have hospital accreditation. So they hired me to set up a program for trauma so they could get their accreditation. And they needed a psychiatrist. So I called David and I said, would you come on board and be the psychiatrist at the school? And he said, sure. So and he has introduced me in a public place as the person who got him back into therapy. But so we worked together there. I only had a contract for 10 months, but he stayed. Once they got their joint hospital accreditation, I was well, that was my contract to get that. So I was out of there. And he stayed on. But the way this came in really handy is the people came from New York to do the accreditation, and they're looking at everything, and they see David Hawkins, and they say, David Hawkins, the David Hawkins.
So he was
And
really
they know
famous.
as a psychiatrist who had 50 other psychiatrists working for him in New York. So
Wow.
I think that was a shoe in. It probably had nothing to do with the program I developed. It was like David Hawkins.
Yeah, yeah. I saw his name. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, right, right.
What
Yes.
was he even I can't find any footage. I'd love to find footage, but there was apparently he was even so famous he was even on TV at some point too.
Oh, I'm sure he was, because he was the first person to use medication with schizophrenia.
Yeah, he was using niacin, vitamin B3, large doses
That
for
was after with Linus Pauling. He was
yes.
using He was the first person to use medicine.
Oh,
With,
really? Before that?
yeah.
Wow,
Uh-huh.
that's
And
interesting.
then he evolved out of that. But
Yeah.
mhm,
So he was
yeah.
a pioneer in that regard as well in the
Yes, yes, yes. And
psychiatry.
that's what they saw when they saw David Hawkins. I'm sure they're from New York. They're
Yeah.
probably they're probably psychiatrists too, I can't remember, but yeah.
Although to be fair, the orthomolecular psychiatry, some fields still don't like that because they don't like the mega doses of vitamins that Linus Pauling was big into and Hawkins was big into as well.
Yeah.
But a lot of fields still don't see it as credible to this day, I
Well,
think.
I'm not sure how research has borne a lot of it out either in the
Okay.
long term. Yeah, to be
Okay.
fair. Uh-huh. Yeah.
That so but did you notice anything other than what that he was not talking? Was he he was not unusual? Was he just an ordinary? Well, he was famous, I
He was a
guess.
sweet guy. He was just a sweet, nice man.
Yeah.
Very nice man. And as we were speaking before, he was a man who would be kind to everybody.
Yeah.
Which is the nicest thing I can think you can say about anybody.
Very nice. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, a lot of my listeners obviously are influenced by his spiritual work and later much later in life, I think between 2002 and 2011 he gave about, I want to say about 40 or 50 lectures or so,
Yeah.
and people are highly touched by them, and in the books I think it was about 7 or 8 spiritual books that he's written that
Mhm.
were highly influential, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and did you know him then personally as well? Like, would you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I worked with him at the school and he
Yeah.
would refer people to me in my private practice sometimes. And yeah, we'd talk and, we'd talk about his relationship and I'd talk about my relationship. And, we shared office space after that.
Okay.
Two of my offices. I had one office and he had it on certain days. And then I moved my office and he moved with me. And, yeah.
So he talked about his relationship with Susan,
Yeah, you're in.
or was there
Yeah.
something before that too?
I can't even remember. I think it was mostly Susan. Yeah.
Yeah, mostly Susan.
Yeah. I mean, just the normal things people talk about.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I mean, he wasn't coming to me for therapy or I wasn't going to him for therapy. We were just chatting like
Yeah,
friends. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
friends.
But
Yeah.
but 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 then he actually, because of you, he actually got back to he was working as a psychiatrist basically. Like
Yeah.
but he wasn't full time. He was like part time.
I think so. Yeah. He was part time at the school. And then he also branched out in the same town in Prescott and he had some sort of a recovery
Recovery ranch for girls, I think.
a ranch. Well, I don't
Um,
know what they called it. It was an office there, I
oh,
think.
okay, okay,
But he has a ranch nearby, near where I live. Because they had llamas on it, and they had.
okay.
Did you know he had llamas?
I think I've heard that, yeah, that he had llamas. That's a very funny animal to have.
Yes, yes, yeah, and chickens,
Yeah.
and he had names of all the chickens, and we would get a Christmas card with all the chickens' footprints on it with their names.
Really? Footprints.
Yeah, I wish I had them. Somebody would really treasure those now,
Oh,
I'm sure.
I think somebody would pay quite a bit of money for it
Yeah,
too.
their history. Yeah.
I didn't know about that. That's really interesting. Wow.
He was a very nice man.
Mm.
Hmm.
But obviously, you guys, it was professional. He didn't talk about spirituality, obviously. So it was in that context. He wouldn't come out and say, "Oh, I had this realization about the nature of the universe." He wouldn't come
I
out
don't
and
think
say,
so.
"Nah." He
No,
wouldn't.
I don't
He
think
was just an ordinary guy, basically.
so. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. That
Hmm.
just happened to be in
Yeah,
his previous life a famous
right.
psychiatrist in New York.
Yeah, actually, I think this was before he met Susan or started dating Susan. We were at a dance once, just a local little place that had a dance floor, and he was there with somebody, and that's when he introduced my husband as his best friend. And I was like, what? Yeah. But so he was there dancing,
Oh, so
yeah.
it was so he liked the country dancing.
I think it was country dancing, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But did your husband was also like uh meeting up with him at some time? They were friends, became friends or not?
Yeah, we went out to dinner a couple times, but I wouldn't
Okay.
say we were great friends, but he apparently liked my husband enough to introduce him as his best friend.
Oh, but he had no friends probably back then when he came to Sedona.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that's before he started writing the books and everything. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a very great man.
I
Hmm.
mean, he did come with a guy named Randy or something. I'm not sure. Was he Randy?
I don't know about that. So yeah.
Okay. I think he also lived in Sedona, but maybe they were not that close friends. But anyway, let's see. I want to end on TFT note. So you said you want to one of your passions is to provide TFT to low or to middle income countries in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, low and middle
So
income countries.
so
Yeah.
just for the viewers, would like to know how it's going. Like what are you partnered with the organization to do that or
Well, I usually get a little money here and there, from ASAP or from the TFT Foundation. And, I've been to Rwanda 6 times, but 3 times doing research. And I worked with some therapists in Kurdistan, and they did some research there, which turned out very nice, comparing cognitive behavioral therapy with TFT,
oh wow.
a case series. And let's see where else. As far as, well, I've been to Japan after the tsunami and things like that there, and Kuwait after the war there. And but research wise, it's going on in Mexico now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'd like as many opportunities as I could. So if there's anyone out there in a middle or low income country that wants to get some training and can find a way to get me there, I'd be happy to go.
But is there a place where people can go that can donate for this cause, your mission that you have, your passion?
Hmm. I suppose either the TFT Foundation or the ASAP, if they say it's specifically for research done, under the supervision of Suzanne Connolly or something like that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so that
yeah,
would so you don't
yeah.
have but you don't have one specific like website or a cause.
No, no. Mm-mm.
Hmm.
But usually I get a little money from TFT Foundation or ASAP.
Okay. Okay. So they're the uh, organization that people would contact to
Yeah.
get you the funds.
It would have to be specified because most of ASAP is pretty much devoted to EFT.
Okay.
So it would have to be specified. Yeah.
ASAP is
Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology. Yeah.
sorry, come again?
It stands for the Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology.
Awesome. Awesome.
So it has a lot of different kinds of good things going on.
Cool.
Yeah, but
And
mostly the money goes to research for EFT.
right.
TFT
And
is, of course, devoted to TFT. So
I remember in December, we spoke last year after I had this session, and you said you have something, and you went somewhere in December last year, right?
well, that was probably Mexico in
Okay,
November.
yeah, okay,
Mhm.
November, yeah.
Yeah. And I have some money that was donated to go to Kurdistan uh, for research, and then things kind of fell apart with that. So if there's anyone out there in Kurdistan, I already have some money for that.
Okay,
Mhm.
so it's incredible. You're still active. You're still going out there and
Yeah, I'm 80 years old too.
80. Wow,
Yeah.
I sure you're don't look a day over 72. I don't know. I didn't know your age, so
Yeah.
I didn't want to ask. But wow. 80.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, still trying.
so but you saw a lot of wow, progress in well, in a way progress, in a way not in the world. How do you feel the world has changed?
Well, there's less violence now in the world than ever before in history.
Hmm.
You know, of course, it's very dangerous. Violence does break out.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah, yeah.
You're
I
talking
think
about
I think
overall
there's probably
violence.
less starvation right now than ever before in history. I mean,
Yes.
gradually I think things are better. As far as if you look at the United States, we can vote. You know, people aren't hanging black people anymore. If people look at the good old days, and they really weren't that so good for a lot of people.
Right. Um,
Mhm.
so you mean a woman can vote? I don't know when did women got a right to vote in US. Must have been
A little over 100 years ago. I forget the exact date, but
okay. Okay. Gotcha.
1900s. Yeah, black men got the vote first, and then all women,
Okay.
and then later. So
Yeah.
in the right stays, yeah. So it's been a struggle. It's been a growing experience, and I think countries go through the stages of growth just like people do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm a bit concerned about the West. I think some in some ways it's going down. Like the I've personally had experience with university where they were in some classes whenever politics was involved, they weren't teaching kids how to think, but they were teaching them what to think. They were
Oh,
all slanted in one way, and
in a
but
university in the U.S. or
this was in UK. It was in
okay.
Scotland, one of the Scot. But I think in US it's pretty much the same because I've spoken to a lot of people that went to college in US and I've heard many stories. But
Mhm.
maybe this is temporarily. Maybe this is just hysteria of the times. Maybe I don't know. Maybe
No,
we.
I think there's probably a lot of good stuff being taught in schools here, but there's always this undercurrent of very conservative people, who want to change history and don't want the truth to ever come out. They want to whitewash it.
Okay.
They get the whole picture. But I think the biggest problem is people are getting too self-focused.
Self-focused
Self-focused.
narcissist.
Yeah, yeah. Well, not truly narcissists, but they're getting too focused on themselves and their own happiness, and
Oh yeah. Okay.
it's less of a community thing. I think that's
Oh
recently read something of a woman whose children were raised for 10 years in China, of all places, and she wasn't glorifying China in any way, but she was saying one thing her children learned is the importance of the group, and we don't learn that so much in the West.
yeah. And particularly in
Mhm.
America is very much individualistic.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I had this experience also in France where I'd see people come in for breakfast, and I was there as a volunteer, and I cut baguettes. A very stereotypical job, cut baguettes for breakfast in the morning, and they would come in, and if you see, and this is cultural, when Germans come in, their trays would be very neatly, everything neatly placed on the trays, and they'd sit at the table like somebody organized them, very neatly, very neat,
Yeah.
everybody at the table.
Hmm.
Americans come and they sit and they come and the way they take this stuff is very kind of interesting, and then the way they sit is like one sits there, one sits there, one sits there, one sits there, and then the teacher's speaking, and they're still like kind of like one is this direction, one is this direction, one is this direction, and
Ah,
the
yeah.
Germans like the Germans is the other extreme. The Germans would everybody would pay attention, to the teacher. Everybody would be this. The
Hmm.
Spanish would be more tend to be more loud. The French are a little more detached, and
Hmm.
it's interesting, like because there's
Yeah.
I think
But
it's
an
like a
interesting.
cultural
Yeah.
habit that everybody then takes on. It's like a field, and everybody takes on
Mhm.
that habit.
Right, right. Like if you bump into somebody here, you always say, "Excuse me." You
Yeah.
know,
Maybe
I
in some
accidentally
in
touch
some
somebody.
countries, in some countries you wouldn't say excuse me at all. You would say nothing at all.
Yeah. Or
Probably.
if there's a bench and here you would sit on one end of the bench and someone would sit on the other if you didn't know them.
Yeah.
And other places I've heard someone will be sitting on a bench and the other person, no matter how long the bench is, will just sit right down next to them.
Oh, that would bother me. Oh my gosh. I would be like, well, what is this person? Why are you invading my space? Get off me.
I think that was India. I think that was India.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not experienced that culture. Hey, have you been to India?
No.
No. All right.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
And any last words before we part from this podcast?
No, I just want to thank you very much, Matt. This has been fun talking to you. I enjoyed it.
Likewise. I enjoyed it very much. And thank you everybody for listening or watching the podcast.
Okay.
Bye-bye.